There's been a change of plans, tighten up the clamps, we guarding the glass. I'm a Knickerbocker, we going man to man. No blood, no foul, sturdy in the zone. I leave it all on the line, die hard or go home. You see the body work, we shaking and baking. Was down by 20, but my spirit ain't breaking. Respect ain't automatic, you screaming out for the ref for a tech. You for a tech. I guard the garden, steel block swatted, bleed blue and orange. It's a die-hard thing, you know nothing about it. Live with the any star, 5-borough flavor. I made it rain, stole your cookies, see you later. Yeah, die hard. We ain't get these scars for nothing, we gon' die hard. Yeah, die hard. We ain't get these scars for nothing, we gon' try hard. Yeah, lettuce, suck.
I'm still trying to get used to the StreamYard uh interface here. Because one of the podcasts, my mic wasn't even on. The camera mic was on. So like the audio wasn't good. And then my soundboard doesn't work right. So been having problems with the StreamYard stuff. So trying to figure it out. Sometimes they automatically put the sound on, sometimes they don't. So I had a lot of cool shit to say just now, man. So I'm gonna have to repeat everything that I said. So basically, I'm talking about the Bridges trade. So I know you guys saw the T-shirt. I'm gonna show it again just for content. You know, fuck the picks. And I bought the T-shirt immediately, like I said, because I was willing to stick up for the kid. Because we're getting ready for the playoffs and stuff. There's no time to argue. Couldn't really argue. His stats as far as percentage wise and everything like that. He has good stats. Is he inconsistent? Yeah, he might get a 20 piece. He might get a 5 piece. Average it out, then it'll be like 15 points per game. So that's what he's been doing in Phoenix. Not for nothing. That's what he was in Phoenix, just like a glorified, or probably like the best, 3-and-D player in the league. Right now, with the paycheck and the picks that we gave up for this guy, he's basically like the most expensive, you know, 3-and-D player in the entire league. And it's crazy because I'm right here on this page here, they're talking about guys like DiVincenzo and stuff like that. Even DiVincenzo basically is putting up similar stats to Mikal Bridges, and but for like a fraction of the price that we paid for Mikal Bridges. So it sucks, bro. It sucks that we had to go through all that just to get a player. But like I was saying in the beginning of the pod, you guys can hear me, is that everybody was mistaken by Mikal. They thought that he was going to be this scorer because he showed the ability to score a lot of points when he's with the Nets. We forgot the fact that he also was on a losing situation, so nobody else is on the court to shoot the ball. They did have guys like Thomas, over there that's now with the Bucks. But he's like a nut, a freaking flake out there when it comes to scoring. So they were just funneling the ball to Mikal. That's why he got those opportunities. As you see him with the Knicks, as far as shot creation, not much shot creation. Everything is kind of like beelines to the basket, getting screens and just going to the basket, fast break points, get it out the mud kind of points. And then if he drives to the basket, he's looking to turn around to get the turnaround jump shot. So outside of kicking it out, getting the 3-and-D going, as far as defense getting out on the break, shooting threes, his idea of creating his own shot has to do with hitting mid-range jump shots if he can get it. A lot of times he doesn't really like go for it. He stops and he looks to spin. And if he can't get that turnaround jump shot, he's looking for Brunson to bail him out. And then guys like Cat are getting frustrated. OG's getting frustrated because the ball's not moving the way that it should. And it's unfortunate, man. Definitely unfortunate. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys can hear before. I guess I got to repeat it. We the draft picks. It was the Milwaukee pick for 2025, which we already gave up. Last year's 25 pick, 27, 29, and 31. All those unprotected first round draft picks, man. Unprotected. So I mean, if it falls to a certain number, we can't get the pick back. Not that we're worried about that because the Knicks are planning on winning during this time period. Um, it is what it is, man. Like it's not gonna help us as far as like developing players because I don't know if you guys heard that I was talking about Mo Diawara. He's a guy that's definitely ascending right now, playing really well. Coming off the bench and stuff. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, man. But if we're developing these guys, we're finding diamonds in the rough and stuff. We're gonna have to use these diamonds a little sooner than we planned on because we gave up all these assets to get Mikal. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be interesting to see what we do as far as that goes. Pecone Dadier is still a good player. He's a young guy. We got the everybody calls him the white boy. You know what I'm saying from Marquette. He's there too, available. Quite a few things that we got to figure out financially in order, going forward and stuff. But yeah, man, this is Mikal's day here, man. So did we make a mistake that trading for this guy? So what's his role with the team? To tell you the truth, what's his role with the team? Initially, he was supposed to have been the third option with OG being the guy that was just going to be the 3-and-D kind of thing. But it's been like opposite. Mikal has fallen now into like supreme 3-and-D status, and OG is now the third scorer. Now you got guys, three guys shooting, scoring over 20 points, and it's those three. And on the fourth guy is not usually Mikal. Sometimes it's Shamit. Sometimes there's other guys that coming off the bench, like Jordan Clarkson had a breakout game due to necessity because he was out of the rotation. So you got a guy coming off the bench that's going to score 20, and then you got sometimes Josh Hart is a part of that mix too. So Mikal Bridges is really out of it. You know what I'm saying? So right now we can't do anything about it. Mikal Bridges is going to have to eat it. But I think in the offseason, this guy Mikal Bridges might need to find another address to stay at, man. It has nothing to do really with his game per se, because he plays defense. So I'll get into that, because this is what sparked the pod anyway. This particular post here on Threads, just watching it, it was a response to the Fireside Knicks post. So shout out to Fireside Knicks. Fireside Knicks does a good job of posting like really updates. Really, their content is not really where people go for. They really just go for their post here, for the information purposes, the graphics and things like that. So they posted graphics saying that he's ghost, man. The last 3 games is now really 4 games really that he hasn't really scored anything. I think he scored 21 points in the last 4 games. But according to this, this is up 4 points, 6 rebounds. You got 21% from the field, 17% from 3, and plus minus 34, bro. When he's in the game, he's not really affecting the winning part, according to those stats. According to the eye test, it's frustrating because just he shows his emotions in his face. So sometimes you can see that he's frustrated when he's out there. You can see that he's not having fun. Unless he hits a big shot, then he starts doing his little finger thing and dancing and stuff like that. The Utah Jazz were like embarrassing us a little bit in the first half of the last game. Where they were actually mocking Mikal Bridges' little shimmy thing that he does. But thank God that the Knicks finally woke up and then just smacked those guys. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is, man. But Mikal Bridges he's just a glorified role player. But this is what fans said. So shout out to Trans Max on Threads. This is Trans Max. He says he still defends at an elite level. Nobody's saying that he doesn't. But he has been getting scraped a lot lately this year. Steals, blocks are ways to contribute to this team. Yeah, basketball. Steals, blocks is basketball. Rebounding is basketball. He's been rebounding. You give him that 6 rebounds per game. He usually gets you around 3 or 4 per game for his career. He doesn't really rebound that well, but 6 rebounds per game is pretty good for him. What else did he says? He's contributing to stops and hesitations against the other team. So that's his words there. So I do agree with that. It's not nobody's knocking that thing, but it's just the investment that we put in that. So I mean, like if a guy like Shamit's making the league minimum, bro. So you mean to tell me that we can't just use him for those purposes? Shout out to Mo Diawara. He's coming off the bench. He's basically a 3-and-D right now. He's starting to add a little, drive, mid-range driving and take moves. He's done one good take move every game, like in this since probably 2026. Mo Diawara has been showing a lot, bro. So he's actually showing a little bit more than Mikal offensively. So if Diawara's hitting that 3 and able to create his own shot when the time comes, knows when to call his own number, and he can still get other guys involved. So then it makes you wonder, what do we need Mikal for? Because then you could throw into the mix that a guy like Miles Bridges, Deuce McBride, I'm talking about. We got Deuce McBride. He's coming back. So where does Deuce McBride fit? Because even though guys like Alvarado's not necessarily playing the best, he's contributing to defense. He's contributing to pushing the ball and getting assists and stuff like that, and drawing defense away for other guys to get open, even though he might not be scoring, or sometimes he might not be getting the assists and stuff like that. He is getting the steals. He's doing things like that, and then he gets those in spurts. So he's actually helping the team, but he's also making the league minimum. You know what I'm saying? So it's definitely a road that we're gonna have to cross at the very beginning of the offseason, man. I think Mikal Bridges needs to go. Right now, we have guys that can do what he does. As far as the the 3 scorers, we have those already. We have 3 scorers. We have plenty of role players that do what he does as far as 3-and-D on the team. We have guys that we also have to pay. One thing that I think the Knicks do need, we need another rebounder. Between Mitchell Robinson, who's always hurt, and then we got Cat, who's out there rebounding. You got Josh that's rebounding. OG's not a good rebounder as our starting power forward. So we're gonna need that extra rebounder. And I believe that Mikal Bridges, if we can possibly move him for somebody that's like he's got to be a 3-point shooter because that's how this NBA is. But somebody that's a little bit more physical and then that can actually rebound the basketball also. Somebody like Yabusele. Yabusele was the guy that we needed, coming off the bench. But if we can get somebody like legit, then we could trade Mikal Bridges because Mikal Bridges is a good player. Trade him to a team that can use him, and then we can possibly get a really good player back for Mikal Bridges. That's something that's going to be, down the road and stuff. So I'm just looking, because I apologize for the audio issues in the beginning. Like I said, I'm blaming it on StreamYard because every time I come on this thing, man, there's always something missing on here that I can't figure out. But shout out to Vinny OG. He said no audio. Let me get to some thing here. We got Daniel Berry Sports always on chiming in. I'm quite sure that he's on my channel talking. We got Kareem Grant always in the place. Let me know what's going on. Always holding me down. We got Keith here. We got always a Nick is in the place. We got Randu. What's up? We got Keith Turner. Keith Turner said Nick Nation in the building was good chat. We got Kareem again. He says, damn, we just had a discussion last week about Bridges. Yeah, Bridges is crazy, man. He's the fallen. Shout out to Big Camity one. He's F them picks. People only worried about those picks because of of Giannis. Yeah, that's another thing too, man. Do we really want Giannis at this point now? So I mean, like I said, next year is a whole nother story. We can figure it out. But once we get Giannis, we're gonna have that problem again. Well, somebody's gonna have to fall out of that top 3 scoring, thing because you really can't have too many guys asking for the ball. 3 people is enough. So if you got Giannis, you got Cat possibly. I don't know if Cat's gonna go. Maybe Mikal Bridges might be in that trade for Giannis. So yeah, anyway, it's all possible. It's all possible to get Giannis. But the picks do help. The picks would have helped to spicing up things, But the Knicks have stockpiled a lot of young players. Possibly we can throw some of those young guys in there. We can't trade 2026 pick outright, but we can draft the player and then send them to Milwaukee in the trade also. So that's something to think about also. So yeah, man, it is what it is when it comes to that. Said Bridges looked bad last night. Yeah, man. He looks bad. He looked bad, like as far as like because he wants to score. That's the thing. He wants to put the ball in the basket. He wants to be involved. He wants to be able to do his little stuff, but he just can't. He just can't because just the way that the team is situated, the way that we've been winning, how the manner in which we win. When OG is doing his thing, we're good. When Mikal's doing his thing, he's good too. But it's just that we cannot be playing the back and forth between those 2 players. Somebody has to take the back seat to that. You know what I'm saying? And then it's almost impossible to have like a Josh Hart, OG, and Mikal, and all 3 of them are seesawing. Like they don't know if they're going to be the 3rd option that night or not. It's not really fair. One of those guys have to be eliminated out of that equation. Catch and shoot guys like Shamit. Like I keep mentioning Shamit. What's the difference for real? What's the difference between Shamit and Mikal? At least Shamit knows when the ball comes to him, he's got to get that shot up for the 3-point shot. Shamit can defend. He can get to the basket. He can dunk on you too. He can do everything Mikal could do. So Mikal might get a couple more, stats sometimes. Sometimes a guy like Shamit, it looks like he does not doing anything out there. As far as when you look at the stat sheet, but when you watch the game, you could have swore that Shamit had like 10 rebounds in the game because it's the way that he's contributing to the boxing out and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? So we'll be fine. Same thing with a guy like Miles McBride. I mentioned him earlier. Miles McBride is another guy that's like kind of on the fence because if he comes back, he's really a shooting guard. He's not a point guard. Miles has never been, Deuce has never been a point guard. He's like really like a shooter. He's a 3-and-D. So how many of these guys are we gonna have, just sitting around the bench of not being used? Look at Jordan Clarkson, for Christ's sake. Jordan Clarkson could literally be our backup shooting guard, but right now in the scheme of things, Shamit, he just fits much better what we're trying to do. So it is what it is when it comes to that, overpay for a wing. Yeah, man. So does anybody have any solutions for the situation right now? I know we can't do anything about it now, but do we have any solutions, like going forward that you would like to see done with Mikal? I know we talked about Giannis, but is there another situation that we would like to bring into this? And then also too something else to think about. As far as trades and stuff, is this legit the worst trade that we've ever had as a Knick in Knicks history? There's some other guys too. You got Rock Inc. You got Rock Inked here. You see, he agrees with that. He or she agrees to that. You got GM, you got G Mag Radio. He says, indeed, we have other scorers who are capable of carrying the team. Some people don't get it. Yeah, it's not that people don't get it. That Mikal Bridges is not the scorer. I just explained it. We already have guys that can do that. So we do need Mikal Bridges to be the 3-and-D. But he came here expecting to be a third option, possible second option next to Brunson. He came here for that particular reason, to be that second guy. And then the Knicks traded for Cat. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of messed things up. But then we got OG too, and then Josh. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just going around in circles with that conversation. Shout out to Chris for Life. He's on the screen. He's at the bottom. He says, facts. An NBA player has to be able to contribute in all other aspects of the game. It's all good. Everybody thinks they're smarter than the next one. Everybody likes to throw, jabs and be disrespectful in the way that they speak and stuff. But, everybody understands basketball and whatever. But, it's only but one basketball, like they say. And then also, too, guys have roles. Every team has certain roles. You've never seen a team where like 5 or 6 guys are all getting 20 points per game. It's like something that doesn't really happen. And if you do find a team like that, they usually are not necessarily that good. Shout out to Boston. I'm thinking about Boston a few years ago. When they had a couple of years ago, they had like maybe like 4 guys that scored 20 points per game. I can't really get the guys' names but you guys could look it up. A couple of years ago, back when they had the kid from Rice, what's his name? He scored 20, a couple other guys. I think they might have had 4 20-point scores, but they didn't win the championship. The motherfuckers got kicked out the first round, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, man. So as far as the Bridges trade here, like, is that the worst trade that you've seen, as a Knick fan? That's something that we can get into. So listen, I got an article here from CBS. They talk about 10 of the worst trades. So we'll get into that in a second. But I just want to point this out when it comes to Mikal. Take a look at this clip where we got 2 NBA players and Mikal talking about Mikal and just listen to what Mikal says as far as what he thinks of himself as a basketball player. But just check this out. This the main anchor of this clip. He surprised me because he's a really smart player. He's also a role player himself, similar to Mikal Bridges. And then the other person that was in this video, as when you see it, he was confused a little bit. He's trying not to to mess the show up. So just take a look at this.
Who the best player in New York?
It's Jalen Brunson or Julius Randle. Dead ass.
Talk to this man.
All right, rock, bro. No disrespect to you, but
no. Who the best player in New York?
I'm gonna say myself, bro.
No, rock out.
I'm talking about.
I got you too, bro. I got you too.
Think about this, bro.
No,
when you talk
pound
about
for pound, he's the best player.
Pound for pound, when you talk about the way he plays the game, the fluidity of his game, the many things he can do in the court. He can guard and play 5 positions. Julius Randle is doing that. I'm not taking nothing away from his game.
Jalen Brunson is like that.
Jalen Brunson he's a top tier IQ basketball player in the NBA. In the league,
who's getting 40
in the league,
17 and 20,
in the league
for
full of low IQ players.
You're absolutely right.
Which is sad that I say it like that because it sounds like I'm taking it away from Jalen, but I'm not.
Yeah, so that was from the Point Forward podcast. I don't know if you guys ever watched that podcast, but I can't believe what's his name, Iggy, Iguodala, whatever his name is. I cannot believe that he was saying that, and he was so animated. He was at the edge of his seat, and you can see Mikal Bridges, the confidence that he had, that he literally at the time thought that he was better than Julius and Brunson. He's the best player in New York. Like, wow, fam. The audacity of some people. It reminds me of RJ Barrett, just the confidence, it's like irrational confidence. It's like, it's okay to think highly of yourself, but it's like, come on, bro. You know what I'm saying? You're a good basketball player. Yeah, you could score points if nobody else is good on your team. You didn't win in Brooklyn. You didn't win as the main scorer. You know what I'm saying? When you did win, which they did win 60 games in Phoenix. You were the best, role player in the league. He almost became defensive player of the year. I believe they gave it to the dude from Boston. I believe he got the defensive player of the year that year. You know what I'm saying? But he was like second runner up that year. So I mean, he is a good basketball player. It's like, you got to tiptoe around how things are going, how I'm explaining this. I'm not saying that he's a bum, but it's just that he just doesn't necessarily fit, all the way as far as, his salary and what we gave up for him and the particular role that he has on his team. He just doesn't fit. He doesn't really fit here. So it's frustrating here. So I mean, it's something that's gonna like that drags on into the off season and stuff, into the playoffs. Because last year we was having these problems. Mikal Bridges was complaining that guys didn't have energy to start the second half of the games. It's Tom Thibodeau run teams. We usually prepared and do well in the first half, but in the second half, the third quarter is when the Knicks used to lose the lead, and then in the fourth quarter they had to fight back from 20 to get it back. Mikal Bridges was a big part of those comebacks and stuff. But the thing is, we had to come back. So, there's the that dynamic of not knowing where your shots are coming from, that type of thing. That's going to cause those problems. But, the thing is, like, if Mikal Bridges was like a $5 million player, or like a $10 million player, even like up to like 15, $15 million, these are role players. $15 million is on the high end there. But, most of these guys are usually minimum 5 million, mid-level exemption kind of guys. You know what I'm saying? Mikal Bridges is on paid like a starter, like a third option starter, man. So, the Knicks might have did too much there. So just kind of getting into that. But I'm just leading that into the 10 worst trades. So we'll get into that in a second. But I see people posting here. So let me see GTSUI 87. He says it's definitely up there, considering that the Lakers got Luka without giving up a first round pick. This is outrageous. Yeah, man. The Lakers have had some outrageous trades throughout the years too. They ended up getting Magic Johnson for Gail Goodrich, way back in the days. You know what I'm saying? They knew that was the Magic draft, and the Utah Jazz traded their pick to the Lakers for Gail Goodrich. So why would the Utah Jazz, one of the worst teams, why would they trade the pick to the Lakers, who I believe just like either they just won a championship or they were basically a championship contender. I don't have the stats. I'm just talking off of my head. You guys, if I make a mistake in chat, I'll make sure to give you guys respect for that. You know what I'm saying? But just going back that far, even like I want to say even before that with George Mikan. Like the way how they got George Mikan, I think was suspect too. So that's going way back to those parts. Bring it up to the fact that they ended up getting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for nothing. You know what I'm saying? And then fast forward to that, so many other players. James Worthy. How the hell did they get James Worthy? They were a perennial playoff team. They were winning championships. How did they get James Worthy? So James Worthy ended up getting on the team, and then they kept that cycle going as far as the winning in those situations. So how it seems like they're constantly winning. Shaq, they went and got Shaq. How did they get the money to get Shaq? And then they actually drafted Kobe. But Kobe was that enigma in a draft. They traded him for a chain smoking center, to Charlotte, for that pick to get Kobe Bryant. So you got to be lucky too. Nobody knew that Kobe Bryant was going to be Jordan. They knew the kid was extremely confident. And shout out to the logo. Jerry West. He saw that in him. He saw himself in Kobe with the confidence and stuff. So that worked out for them. But go down the road, man. You got the Gasol trade. You almost got Chris Paul, but David Stern had to step in and say, nah. We're not doing that. You know what I'm saying? So, it gets crazy. They end up getting Steve Nash and Dwight Howard. You know what I'm saying? The Lakers are crazy, bro. They get anything that they want. The Lakers, so that's never going to stop, I don't think, because the best place to play basketball probably is Los Angeles, definitely. You know what I'm saying? Unless you're in the Clippers. But there's a lot of diehard Clippers fans out there. I know that for a fact. You know what I'm saying? But the Lakers, the Lakers throughout history, just look at their history. And it's just like, just wow, all the different things that they had going their way. The Luka trade is like no exception for that. Shout out to Big Camity. He says, it's not a bad trade. Those picks aren't lottery. Knicks are going to be a top 5 team on all those. Yeah, definitely. The one thing that stands out about this situation in your comment is that the Knicks are actually doing a good job drafting. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to keep calling the kid the white boy, man. I gotta get these guys' names right. But the kid from Marquette, the point guard, he was the best passer in college and stuff like that. So we ended up drafting him. We were lucky to draft him. Shout out to Pacone, like I said. Diawara, guys that are that have a lot of potential and stuff like that. We're developing guys. So the Knicks are getting quality players that could possibly play for us, going down the line. There's been a couple other guys too that I can't get their names right now, but we've had some quality players that can contribute if need be. Let's say if guys get hurt, we can go down the line and bring these guys up, and then it helps us out there. So the Knicks have done a great job. So you got to tip your hat to Leon Rose, because he's not perfect. He's made mistakes and stuff throughout his tenure, but he's done more good than bad. You know what I'm saying? And we're definitely in good shape going forward to make whatever trade we need to make. So like if we need to stack the chips to get Giannis, we got Diawara that can fill in spots. We got minimum players that we can keep re-signing, and young players that we can fill into spots that we know that we can trust going forward. So that's all important. Shout out to Mike Morgan. He says, I think 2 or 3 players won't be on his roster next season. No doubt. So I mean, salary cap wise, let's take a look at that real quick before we get into the some of these trade things here. So let's take a look at the Knicks here. Let's do Knicks basketball reference. Basketball reference is a one-stop shop for everything, man. So we're not sponsored by by them, but I clicked the wrong one. But just stats wise, for anybody that's looking to get information, they're the best out there. They're starting to ask for bread though, because I'm quite sure it's hard to keep the site up where everybody's using them for information and stuff. But they're fantastic. So I'm gonna go to the league salary, if I could find it, man. Sometimes when you're on the website, things are harder to find. There it goes, compared to the cell phone. So this is the salary. So just going into next year, look at Mitchell Robinson is going to be a free agent, right? Am I right or wrong? I'm looking at Mitchell Robinson's making $12 million now. We're going to have to pay him next year. $12 million for a guy that's always out, to me, is about right. You know what I'm saying? But he's going to get much more in the open market, because a lot of teams are looking at us. Why the Knicks only playing him a little bit of minutes? He's the best rebounder in the NBA. I've heard people say that. Like, how come we're playing the best rebounder in the NBA only 15 minutes or less than that? Why are we playing them such small minutes? They don't really know because they're not here with us. Jose Alvarado what is this? It's a player option, 4.5. So he might actually rescind that and enter the open market and try to get a little bit more bread. Miles McBride is gonna be in his last year of his contract next year. Shamit's gonna be free. He's a minimum player. Pecom Dadier is a team option. We might keeping him. We just might end up keeping him just because we're gonna need players, because we're probably gonna end up trading for Giannis possibly, or making another move. So we're gonna have to cheat with some of these players. So the kid from Marquette, finally, his name is Kolik, bro. So I mean, no disrespect, I just can't think of the name right now. There's a lot of things in my head as far as this pod, So he's still on the rookie scale. So if we decided to get up off of Alvarado and just give it to Tyler Kolik, he's still signed for the next 2 years, so that's fine. Everybody else is free. Ariel Hakporti, he's more than likely going to be gone unless we don't sign Mitch. Then Hakporti might be called on. Mohamed Diawara, Mo Diawara, he's going to be a free agent next year. He's only making 1.2, so we're going to have to pay that kid. Diawara, what is he worth? What is Diawara worth in the open market, man? He's been playing really well. Shout out to SoCam. SoCam is a nice piece that possibly we can keep and hold on for next year too. He wanted to be here, so he might be a guy that might be willing to sign with a minimum or something like that just to stick around. So there's something to play around with. Some of these other guys, Kevin McCullough and all these guys, we're talking about those rookie deals and that type of thing. So it's interesting because guys like, I see a guy here, Tosan. I never could pronounce his name, but he's a good basketball player. So it's just that there are players out the league that we can find. The Knicks are winning, so a lot of people enjoy watching this play. So we should be able to find players, you know what I'm saying, to fill out the roster. It's just the main guys. We're gonna have to figure out who we're gonna keep. Some of these guys, OG's making $42 million, which is a crazy overpayment, I think. Regardless of how good you think he is on defense, he just that $42 million, it just doesn't sit right to me. Jalen Brunson's only making 37, but he signed for a couple of years. Mikal Bridges is gonna be making 33 next year, bro. Mikal Bridges is on the books all the way to 29-30. 29-30 is a player option, so he's taking that. He ain't worth $41 million, and no point of his life will he ever be worth that. So he's going to be with us until 29-30 unless the Knicks trade him. Knicks are going to have to trade that motherfucker, man. I don't know what you guys think. Josh Hart's only making 20. Very good contract for what he brings to the table. Somebody like him, 31 now, 32, 33, we're talking about. Is he going to be somebody that we're going to keep around? We got a team option for 27, 28. I think we're not going to keep him. We're probably going to get rid of that contract. So then next year he's like basically an expiring deal. So there's a lot of shit, man. I'm looking at it now, man. Thank you, Mike Morgan, for the question there. For the comment, I should say. There's a lot to think about, man. It's not so simple right now. So that's what makes the stakes of this season so much higher. And then the fact that the Mikal Bridges, he thinks that at one point he thought he was better than Julius and Brunson. He said it out his own mouth there, on that podcast the clip that I just showed you. You know what I'm saying? So if these guys got to get their egos together, if they can get their egos together, the Knicks can really push to make a championship this year. So, I mean, this year we kind of need to do that because next year's offseason is going to be an MFer, man. I don't know what Sim thinks of that. I don't know what any other guys from MBK think of that. But next year in this offseason, man, forget about it. You want to talk about content? I love talking about the draft. I love talking about offseason stuff. So next offseason, man, it's going to be something to talk about. So I see somebody else here. This is a member here. I believe this is a member on Sim's channel. So this is Sima Singh 83. He says he's not good at his role, inconsistent from three, and inconsistent defender who does not like contact. That's another thing. He doesn't like contact. So when it comes to trying to get it out the mud, get a shot out the mud, Mikal Bridges is just not your guy. Can he slip back door and get to the basket? Yes. Can he get a steal, go full court? Yes. But a lot of times when the going gets tough and the tough defense of Detroit and say OKC, teams like that, even Boston, when that defense gets tough and that ball ends up in Mikal Bridges' hand, you know what I'm saying? He's gonna be looking for help. He's gonna be looking for Brunson to save him. You know what I'm saying? And he has up until this point, he has not proven in his career that he can get points out the mud. You know what I'm saying? Get a bucket. Like, we need a bucket, bro. You got the ball. You look at the shot clock. Shot clock is at a certain point where it's your turn. You got to get it. I don't think he's that guy. He's just not that guy. And it's not a knock to him. It's not a knock to him. It's not his fault that teams offering him this money. It's not his fault. You know what I'm saying? So another team might value him in the role that he presents to the team. To their team. You know what I'm saying? Right now, we definitely could possibly get somebody, cheaper anyway. So I'm just looking at some of the guys you're saying. A lot falls on the shoulder of Jalen Brunson. He's probably told management that we should sign him. Yeah, I believe so. It was a lot of fun. It was all good a week ago, right? DiVincenzo, that was the plan. We were supposed to have kept DiVincenzo. It's the fact that Mitchell Robinson, the guy that we're probably not even going to have on the team next year, it was because of his inavailability, excuse me, not being available, that we traded for Cat. We traded Julius and Dante DiVincenzo for Cat. As they said, they did not want to trade DiVincenzo. They wanted to send somebody else instead of DiVincenzo. They wanted to send Mitch, to tell you the truth, instead of DiVincenzo. But the Knicks just made the deal. They just made the deal. Got Mikal Bridges, made it happen, and they just dealt with it because after they made that Cat trade, they just they made the Mikal trade first. They didn't make the Mikal. They made the Mikal trade first, and then they had to make the Julius trade because of Mitch. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of things going on here. So it's kind of funny how we made that decision, and then both players that were the cause of that situation are not going to be here. Or possibly might not be here. So it's interesting, man. Definitely appreciate the comments and stuff. Comments definitely gives talking points. I could talk to myself this whole podcast. You guys know that already. From just judging from the hours, I'm only supposed to be on here an hour, and I'm literally talking the whole freaking time. You know what I'm saying? So there is the link in the chat, is in the beginning there. We've had a couple guests. Shout out to the Mike Doc that he popped on and gave us some good audio bites. You got my man Kareem Grant popped in once. Sim popped in also for the first episode. Throughout time, I also had a couple guests on the show as well too, man. So they're definitely gonna need your help and stuff as far as maybe something that you want to say that I'm not saying, or something that you want to bring up. You can just use that link and pop in, As long as you you know, you're not doing nothing crazy, you know what I'm saying? We'll pop into the chat and we'll see how it goes from there. You know what I'm saying? So definitely appreciate, you know, the chat. Definitely reading the comments and putting it on there. That's also great too, man. Not everybody's built to be talking on the mic and stuff, man. So I totally get it. So just scrolling through here, just making sure I get some of your stuff because I know you guys you know, I know what it is to be commenting and people don't see it. You know, yeah. Yeah, I believe so, you know. But like the point I was trying to make, I think he wanted DiVincenzo there too. You know, so you know, initially it would have been Mikal DiVincenzo still would have been on the team with Josh and Brunson, and that was the dream. That was the dream to have all those guys on the same team. You know, but we made that trade for Cat. That's the whole point I'm trying to make there. So scrolling through here, I see you guys are definitely listening. So shout out to Big Mike there. He says nobody. I'm telling you, nobody's gonna take Bridges off our hands with the amount of money. Yeah, man. Look at. I don't know if you guys can see it on the screen. I got it small, you know, because I prefer to see my beautiful face more than anything. But 33, 36, 38, and 41 and 29, 30, bro. You know, right now he's 29. So we're talking about 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Talking about 33 years old making $41 million. You know, he's an Iron Man. Yes, that's what they say. You know, but how long is that iron going to stay before it starts rusting, bro? You know what I mean? So we got Greedy Grizzly in the place. He says he's not an ISO scorer. If a team signed him expecting him to do that, they're dumb. Yeah, I think we're all dumb. I'll take that. He needs to be played like Rip Hamilton. I get it. But Rip Hamilton also was hungry for that ball. You know, if he's going around screens, running around, he was hungry to score that basketball. You know, he played with Michael Jordan on the Wizards, and Michael Jordan put a battery in his back, and he really ran with that with the rest of his career when he played for Detroit and stuff. So Richard Hamilton always been a good player. You know, shout out to him. I believe he has a history with Kobe Bryant. You know, in the Jersey scene and stuff. You know, playing basketball during that time. So especially the McDonald's All-American game and that type of thing. So you know, he has that experience where he wants to prove to his peers that he belongs. He did do that. They won the championship and stuff, but I don't think Mikal Bridges is on that level as far as like being hungry for that basket. You know, hungry to get the ball, hungry to get the ball, then put that ball in the basket. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think that he was really that guy. You know, one person that comes to mind is like Kerry Kittles. Anybody remember Kerry Kittles on the New Jersey Nets? You know, Mikal Bridges kind of reminds me of that. You know, but Kerry Kittles was not afraid to go to the basket though. Kerry Kittles ran the floor really well. You know, reckless abandon, got into the passing lanes and that type of thing. Had great hands playing next to the kid, catching passes and stuff. You know, but he wasn't really known for like getting to the basket, you know, creating his own shot. But he was just like a beeline kind of guy, catching passes from kid and that type of thing. You know, so I think Mikal Bridges kind of reminds me of Kittles a little bit. You know, shout out to Kittles. I wonder what he's up to, man. Weird looking motherfucker. Look like the Ice Age dude, even more than the guy that we had last season. So shout out to Johnson. I'll leave it with Johnson. He said Rose says Rose needs to take the responsibility for this most stupid trade. Yeah, you know, so you know, shout out to Fournier. Fournier. So what's the other player that Fournier was traded for? I don't know why I can't think of his name. The dude from you know, from Rice High School. The Bronx finest, man. Why can't I think of his name? I'm gonna feel so stupid if you guys put it in the chat. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, we'll get to the top 10 most you know, craziest trades here, man. So let's see if you guys remember some of these things. They mentioned the Larry Johnson for Mason trade. So you know, on paper it seemed like it was a good idea because we needed somebody that can really shoot, somebody that can kind of score. But Larry Johnson wasn't really that guy anymore. You know, rebounding wise, he wasn't the rebounder that we kind of needed him to be or whatever. But he was functional. You know, he had the 4-point play and that type of thing. You know, but you know, Anthony Mason ended up being an all-star. You know, and being a third string. You know, it says it right here on the screen, being like a third-team All NBA back in 1997. So you know, trading for Larry Johnson wasn't necessarily like a crazy thing because we could have kept Anthony Mason. And I think we would have still had the same results if we would have kept him. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not sure if there was any draft picks or anything like that added to it. But yeah, as far as production, Anthony Mason was in his prime kind of. You know, really, you know, his prime was kind of extended because he was like an older draft pick, not draft pick, older all-star at the when he finally got it. You know what I'm saying? But you know, Anthony Mason was a fan favorite, you know, still could play really well, man. So that's something there. So let's check out the next one. Jalen Rose. When we traded for Jalen Rose, we traded Anthony Davis, who was declining, but we also added a first round draft pick to that to Jalen Rose. So Jalen Rose, I think basically that was like his last year in the NBA when he played for the Knicks or something like that, man. So Jalen Rose, the thought of it, 20 point a game scorer to come in here and just add to what we're doing here. Isaiah Thomas was trying to get a very skilled offensive team together. A lot of guys that could do stuff, whatever. So I get it. Getting a Jalen Rose on the downside of his career will help out, the young guys that he was trying to build up. But that was just a bad idea, especially adding that first round draft pick to him. So I mean, you can look at the salary. I think he was making a lot of bread too at the time. Number 8, they mentioned Shannon Anderson. Anything having to do with Shannon Anderson. We traded Shannon Anderson for Glenn Rice, $1 million, and it was like a big trade. The Mavericks sent Howard Isley to the Knicks also. Howard Isley and freaking Shannon Anderson was like two of the worst basketball players that we ever had on this roster. They took up a lot of bread off the salary cap at the time. They didn't do nothing for us, man. They basically brought on probably like the worst era in Knicks basketball, this particular trade back in 2001. There's going to be a couple trades that all come from that era. 2003, the Latrell Sprewell trade. We traded him for Keith Van Horn. Keith Van Horn didn't even play a whole season. We traded him for Tim Thomas. Tim Thomas ended up getting off the team also. Did they trade any draft picks or whatever? I don't believe they traded any draft picks, but the reason why we traded Sprewell because he was feuding with Dolan. For those that remember. And now if you go to the Garden, you're going to see Sprewell. Sprewell is sometimes he's in the lobby. Sometimes he's like if you come across security on the main entrance in Madison Square Garden, if you look up, Sprewell is usually standing up there looking down on the fans and waving and stuff like that. He does fan appearances. I believe was I with OmniFan? I think I was with either OmniFan or Anthony MSG, somebody, and we was in the VIP, and he came up, to the VIP, and I actually got to meet him, took pictures and stuff. I believe it was OmniFan, but no, matter of fact, I think it was Anthony MSG, and I got to meet Sprewell and stuff, so that was pretty cool, But the thing is, we actually got rid of him because him and Dolan had some beef. To this day, I don't really know what's up with that. I think a lot of people forget about that they had like a big beef going on. Here goes another trade. We traded Channing Frye and Steve Francis to the Trailblazers for Zach Randolph. That's actually a good trade, That actually is a good trade. I don't know what else they got going on here, but we probably should have kept Zach Randolph because we got Zach Randolph. He had a lot of off the court stuff, like he had like an aura around him. But I think if we would have kept Zach Randolph, I think we probably would have been better off. So I don't really see the other things here going on with this trade that would make it bad. But we'll keep scrolling here. This is another one here. Marcus Camby and Mark Jackson for Antonio McDyess, man. That McDyess trade set it off. You talking about 2002, 2003, we traded Sprewell and all this. 2003, that era, that's when we started going down the road of destruction during that time, man. So, that McDyess trade, I think that shit broke me, man. Because Marcus Camby was one of my favorite players. Mark Jackson, we ended up getting him back, on the second stint there. So when he came back, I got to appreciate Mark Jackson. But then once we traded him for McDyess, and then McDyess blew his knee, and not even in the regular season game, in the preseason game, I think that broke me, man. That was like a real dark time in sports. But I always tell fans back in 2002, 2003, I was like maybe like 20, 23, 24. So I was in the prime of my youth there, man. You know what I'm saying? So I was in the bars. We was out there. I had my Knicks fans from, I always mention ultimateknicks.com. Shout out to ultimateknicks.com, my guys. And a couple other Knicks fans that I used to be with during that time. My friend, my peer group at that time, we used to be rolling deep out there in those bars, hanging out, getting girls and stuff like that, all circling around the Knicks and stuff. So I had a lot of fun during that time period, even though we were losing, you know what I'm saying? But like the bar scene, as far as us Knicks fans, was dope. There was no social media. There was nobody with a cell phone trying to, yo, what's up? Yeah, here the streets. There was no somebody like, going for clout, when there's girls around, bro. You know what I'm saying? So I used to have a lot of fun during that time period. Young Eru out there on the scene, you know what I mean? The next one I see, this is the we traded Trevor Ariza and Penny Hardaway for Steve Francis. That was crazy because Steve Francis later on we found out that he was like an alcoholic, and a lot of other different things going on here. I think the Patrick Ewing trade is coming up soon. So I mean, this is another trade here. This is the Marbury trade. So Marbury, we ended up trading McDyess, Howard Isley, Charlie Ward, Lampy, Milos Fujanic, somebody that was probably like one of the best point guards in the world. That he never made it to the Knicks. A couple two first round picks in cash, and for Penny Hardaway and Marbury. That was back in 2004. You know what I'm saying? So getting Marbury was dope, but the Knicks had some momentum. We had Frank Williams. I don't know if anybody remembers Frank Williams. So maybe trading for Marbury was like something that we shouldn't have done. We should have just stuck with Frank Williams and then seeing how that goes. They traded for Marbury, but after trading for Marbury, they didn't do anything to help Marbury out. And then Marbury had his emotional breakdown in front of all of us. You know what I'm saying? And then, like I said, that time frame, all these years that I'm mentioning, 2001, 2, 3, 4, and 5, here goes number 5, this is the Eddie Curry trade. Jesus Christ, Eddie Curry trade. The Knicks traded the 2006 first, the 2007 29, second round picks, pick swaps, all kind of stuff, all for Eddie Curry, man. Eddie Curry was almost out the league at that point anyway. Fat Curry at that time, man. Shout out to Big Cam that he mentioned Eddie Curry trade. Eddie Curry trade is number 2 on this list. So this is a decent list, man. I'm looking at it. So Eddie Curry, man, Isaiah Thomas, he had a vision. He was just trying to find the diamonds in the rough, and he thought that his Chicago, power and his aura of being Isaiah Thomas was gonna, give these guys energy to make them something. And he just was like very ambitious in his dealings and stuff. So yeah, number 1, according to CBS News here, is the Patrick Ewing trade. Let me give credit to the author here. The author of this is Ed Easton Jr. from CBS News here. So this is his article. So a lot of these things I agree, man. A lot of bad memories here when it comes to Knicks stuff. But yeah, man, the worst trade in Knicks history is it the Ewing trade? The Ewing trade is what set it off. We probably should have just let Ewing stay with us and let him finish his career off as a Knick. After we traded for him, that's when Ewing was going down the road where he just wasn't. He was a role player now. He was too old to be the main scorer. You know what I'm saying? So he was basically done with his career. But we should have just kept him. If we would have kept him, it would have kept the Knicks on the straight and narrow. And we would have been able to operate a little bit more responsibly. You know what I'm saying? Lose properly, keep your draft picks, draft well, and then use your money to do your thing. That's what we should have done. It took us all the way until Leon Rose to get here to fix everything. Even before Leon Rose with the other dude there that I can't think of his name, the guy that went to Sacramento. Yeah, so we traded Patrick Ewing. We got Glenn Rice and Luke Longley, Travis Knight. What a crazy trade, man. I think we got Vin Baker in this deal too. They didn't mention, I don't see Vin Baker here, but Vin Baker, I believe, was in that trade also. And Vin Baker ended up being an alcoholic also. His whole career where he ended up being homeless and stuff like that. So it was just a bad trade, man. What year was this? That was 2000. Yes, 2000. Like I said, 2001, 2, 3, 4, and 5. During that 5-year period, man, the Knicks, just went to shit. Shout out to Scott Layden, man. Scott Layden, before Isaiah Thomas, was the one that really started it all, man. So I have another link here. I just want to, there's another one. I'm looking at Andreas Bargnani, man, 2013. Traded for him in a first-round pick and 2 second-round picks and 3 players for Bargnani. So the idea of Bargnani, you want to think of Dirk Nowitzki, but with like missing a chromosome, something like that. Bargnani, he was a decent basketball player. He scored 21 points in Toronto, but that's the same thing with Mikal Bridges. He scored his points in Brooklyn, but then you put him on a team where you were expecting to win, and look what he did, man. He has some of the most questionable, most embarrassing plays, man. And then he left. He never really did anything else in the NBA. Once he was done with the Knicks, he went back to Europe, and you never heard from him again. You know what I'm saying? I don't even hear. As a matter of fact, I think he might be doing MMA or something like that. He ended up doing something other than basketball. So that just tells you how bad that trade was. So a couple of these other trades we already talked about, Ewing, Marbury, Antonio McDyess, those are some bad ones. Like I said, that McDyess trade broke me, man. When he jumped up and dunked and landed and his knee exploded, I was like, bro, man, that was bad, man. But history now, like I said, history now, is gonna talk about Mikal Bridges, and what we did to get him here, as far as those picks and stuff, man. Unprecedented trade for a guy that's legit, basically worth the not league minimum, probably like mid-level exemption player, $15 million a year player, maybe even 20. Like I said, this motherfucker Mikal Bridges is going to be averaging $41 million when he's like 33 years old. What are we doing, bro? So, we're going to be in flux in this offseason, man. So, right on point here. We got like 2 minutes left for this hour. So this will be the first time where I'm actually can see the ending and I can actually finish off in the hour. Because me and Sim had a thing where we're going to start. Everybody wants me to lose my shit on the internet, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm kind of like over that already. But I like talking basketball and stuff like that. I might lose it for certain subjects or whatever. You might see me do that. But I'm not here to go crazy, man. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I could blame liquor for a lot of the rants that I used to have back in the days. I was drinking a lot of whiskey and drinking a lot of beer in my early podcast, man. So check out some of my older content, man. The visuals are different, because I was trying to figure things out. The audio was different, trying to figure stuff out. Like I said, I used to do a lot of pods with State from Twitter. State has his own YouTube channel as well, doing his own content and stuff like that. Me and State will link up again. We've been trying to figure it out. We just can't get together because of our jobs. He's been working a new job, and my hours are out of control, man. So I'm really squeezing out time trying to figure out how I can get here. So we've been really trying with this Thursday, man. And it's been working out so far, being able to sit here and get these pods together, man. So I definitely appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to me on Nothing But Knicks, and also my own channel, Die Hard Knicks. So next week, man, I think next week might be the first day that I don't broadcast on Nothing But Knicks. I mean, excuse me, on Die Hard Knicks podcast. So I will be exclusively on Nothing But Knicks. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see how the week goes and stuff as far as the content and stuff, and then we'll go from there, and then we'll start just showing up with the Die Hard Hour exclusively on Nothing But Knicks. Like I said, on my channel, I'm working on some other stuff to do on my own channel. So please follow me on diehardknicks.com and for more content. More probably explicit content as far as the stuff, because I really don't want to go full Eru. I don't want to go full Eru on Nothing But Knicks, because it's not my channel. You know what I'm saying? So my own channel, if you want to see some off the cuff kind of things, and then I'm tuning over there. So I'll probably be getting stuff going, my channel, but other content, alternate content on my own space there. Yeah, man. So thank you guys for tuning in. It's been Die Hard Ebru here on the Die Hard Hour. Definitely thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate Sim for the assist there to allow me to broadcast on the channel. I've been around Sim. I got a picture that I probably should keep available, that way I can post it, where I met him and Tony Crow years ago back. I don't think it was 2018. It might have been even earlier than that. I met those guys, man, and it's been all love ever since, man. So every time I see them, it's been great. And up until this day, me and Sam, we talk about, off topic stuff, life stuff, and I consider those guys friends, man. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man. So shout out to all the MBK affiliates and stuff like that. Shout out to the chat. Like I said, I leave the link in the chat for anybody that wants to pop in. If you want to pop in and I'll go back and forth with me with some subjects and stuff like that, the door is open, man. So this has been the Die Hard Hour. Yeah, Camby was still playing well, man. Camby went to Denver and ended up playing his best basketball of his career over there in Denver. So yeah, man. I know you guys. Bridges is Alec Burks. Shout out to Alec Burks. Alec Burks created his own shot, bro. Alec Burks has some really good scoring games. Of him creating the shots off the dribble. So don't put Alec Burks in that same category there. I thought he was better. Before we go, let me just I see big paragraphs here. So statistically, it said Bridges is top 5 ISO defender this season. Okay, I got you. Not denying that at all, man. He said he's not a true ISO scorer, absolutely not. So it depends on a point guard to set him up. So yeah, that goes on to the thing that he might just be on the wrong team. So it's all good. JB is a great scorer that don't consistently set up his teammates. Yeah. So I mean, Brunson's role is to score, and people can't stop him. That's one thing. He's been kicking ass, averaging 30 points per game in the playoffs. with great percentages. It's not like he's chucking. He's actually, he's been scoring on whoever they put on him. They've been knocking him on the floor, putting taller defenders on him, putting power forwards on him. He's still scoring on these guys. Double teams, he's still scoring. So that's his role with this particular team. Brunson can pass the ball, but just the way things are now, Brunson is the guy. You know what I'm saying? So if Brunson being the caliber of scorer that he is, like you can't ask somebody that's that cold-blooded and skilled as a scorer to start passing to bums like Mikal. You know what I'm saying? Just because you want to kick it out to them for threes. You know what I'm saying? So there's been a lot of pushback with that too, that the Knicks offense is predictable. We just driving this kind of team outside of that. But it is what it is. Looking to see, because here he goes. Kemba. Big Cam, man. I am getting too old, man. I don't know why I could not think of Kemba Walker, when I was talking about the guys. So it was in Boston, it was Kemba Walker. I forgot the white guy's name, man. See, here we go again. I forgot the white guy's name. But he was the dude that was on Utah. They ended up over there. So it was him and I think Fournier, and then they had somebody else also too that was a really big scorer over there. You know what I'm saying? So they did have like 4 guys that scored 20 that year. So it's interesting, man. Just looking to see anybody else that had anything to say. Yeah, so once again, thank you guys for the contribution and stuff. Also, shout out to the Lettuce who is that actually wrote the lyrics and performed the song that's in the intro and the outro. So we're gonna end the show with the outro here. This is the Die Hard Hour theme song here. Shout out to Sim on the beat. Shout out to the Lettuce with the lyrics. And I catch you guys next week, Thursday at 9:00. Also, please follow me on Die Hard Knicks Instagram with Die Hard Knicks Podcast on Instagram. Also follow me on Threads with Die Hard Knicks Podcast, and also follow me on YouTube for alternate content there. I'll be doing some lives, also maybe shorter content and that type of thing, man. So please follow me on all those platforms, and I catch you guys next week on this channel, Nothing But Knicks, next Thursday, 9 p.m. Let's get it. Catch you guys later.
There's been a change of plans, tighten up the clamps, we guarding the glass, I'm a Knickerbocker, we going man to man, no blood, no foul, sturdy in the zone, I leave it all on the line, die hard or go home, you see the body work, we shaking and baking, was down by 20, but my spirit ain't breaking, respect ain't automatic, you screaming out for the ref for a tech, I guard the garden, steel block swatted, bleed blue and orange, it's a die hard thing, you know nothing about it, live with the any star, 5 flavor. I made it rain, stole your cookies. See you later. Yeah, die hard. We ain't get these scars for nothing, we gon' die hard. Yeah, die hard. We ain't get these scars for nothing, we gon' try hard. Yeah, lettuce, suck.